Welcome everybody to the session anyway from TCD, NUIG, and the link was also sent out to Queen's and Coleraine. So if you have any students there, I'd like to welcome you all. Just to make you aware that the session is being recorded, and it's been recorded so that we can put it on our website and it can be accessible there for the near future until we make any changes or add anything to it. So first of all, this is a session, it's a student info session, and the agenda is we will talk about the organizational structure of the Irish Society for Behaviour Analysis. Alan, Laura and myself will give ourselves a brief introduction. We'll talk about the background of ISBA and the context that has been formed in and how we see ourselves going forward into the future. We will talk about the supports that we have in place for students at the moment and how we see those evolving. We will talk about advocacy in ISBA, and then we'll open to the floor to any questions from any of the students that we have, and we'll answer any questions that have been brought forward also. So I will talk a little bit about myself. My name is David Scannell. I'm board certified behaviour analyst. I have worked in the disability sector since 2004. In 2018, I went back and I did the MSc course in Trinity. And since then, and currently, I work as a positive behaviour support specialist with Ancón Regional Support Services, and we provide a multidisciplinary team to HSE funded agencies in Cork and Kerry. So we've got a big base there, and we're very busy, big caseload, but it's excellent, meeting lots of different people all the time. A great team of people there, and I love what I'm doing. So it just shows, I suppose, in terms of a quick turnaround, I would say, you know, from 2018 to 2023, and of course closely involved with ISBA as well, because like yourselves, I saw the need for an organization like ISBA, because my background is in an arts degree from UCC with a major in sociology, and then a degree in applied social sciences from the Open Training College. And I felt like we needed an organization that not only represents people with a psychology background, but also people that have come into applied behaviour analysis from different backgrounds. So I'll pass you on to Alan Tennyson, who's the co-chair there, and he can tell you a little bit about himself.
Thanks very much, David. That's great. Actually, before I do, I just heard the little ding dong there for someone, and there's another one there for someone coming in. Could you just admit those people, please, David, as you hear that, as you hear that doorbell thing? So yeah, thanks very much again, as David said, for joining us. So my name's Alan Tennyson. I'm a BCBA as well. That was in 2010 that I got the exam, and I work currently in a CDNT as behaviour support specialist, behaviour specialist in Cork and Kerry. I suppose my first, I'm working in disability services since 98, when I finished my degree in psychology, and then you know, I happened across positive behaviour support, and then I was very lucky. I consider myself very lucky to be able to study at the Tizard Centre, where I studied under Peter McGill, and Peter was a BCBA, and he really inspired in me a love of applied behaviour analysis and behavioural science, and what it means to have evidence-based practice, what it means to have an evidence-based approach to your work. And I suppose that's what continues to inspire me That's what binds us together as practitioners and scientists, is this a commitment to the evidence base. So and that's how we see it going forward. So maybe that's me. So maybe I'll hand over to Laura. Is that okay, Laura?
Yep, no problem.
Thanks.
So again, welcome everyone. It's great to see a big turnout as well. I'm Laura Scaly. I'm the other co-chairperson. We're sharing the job, makes it a bit easier. I started in 2001 with the Sapling School in Kildare, and I, like Dave, come from the non-psychology background. I actually was an engineer, would be my base degree. So a long way from engineering now. And then I worked with Saplings until I started having kids, and then I went into a little bit of private work, private home tutor, so the ABA tutor type of route. I also did do the home tuition, so that whole home tuition grant that some of you might be navigating at the moment, did all that work as well. And then around 2013, I went back and did the Masters. So I was one of those people who had been providing ABA services without having the Masters under me like I should have been. And went back when kids were old enough then to do the Masters, then do the BCBA exam, and on to do a doctorate. And now I am working with rehab care as a behaviour therapist. So I've gone through the kind of home tutor, the tutoring stage, through to the early intervention, and I'm now working with adults in the disability sector. I have loved both jobs. It's a very varied field, so it is a great field to be part of. I also have 4 kids. 2 of them are autistic and one of them has Down syndrome. So I would be living the parental life as well. So I see it from both sides. And apart from needing the accreditation, which we need as a group of professionals, I also see a huge need for our field to be accountable, and for the level of qualifications and experience and supervision to be in place to protect families, because there is a lot of poor practice out there under the name of ABA in this country, as there is in all countries. But I've seen a lot of it through my personal journey as well as my professional journey in this country. So I'm coming from both sides, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So that's me.
Very well said, Laura. Thank you.
And I think we go on to the next slide. I'm continuing, Alan, aren't I?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just to give a little bit of background as to how ISBA kind of has come around and what's been happening the last few years. Before I suppose we start into the ISBA journey, I would like to make a nod to the DBA that's been, they've been a presence in Ireland since 2003, I believe, and they have been paramount to looking at the accreditation process from a national point of view and trying to tie in with the PSI. Now that route for the PSI was always going to only be open to people with the psychology background, but the BCBA accreditation was the other pathway that they were looking at for those without that psychology route. And that was going okay up until the BACB decided to depart from Ireland in December 2019, when that was announced. So at that stage then a working group started to put together a process for how we could support people without that psychology degree. And that started not long after, that would have been early 2020. So between early 2020 and 2021, October 2021, that working group was devising all of the legal constitutional parts that would form the organisation. And then we had our inaugural meeting in October 21. And shortly after that, then we registered as a company with the company's registration office. So that was the kind of legal structure and setup of ISBA. to, I suppose, support membership and how we were going to do it, we then set up IT. But because we are not an organisation at this stage that has no membership, we also have no money. So the board of directors funded and have been funding up until the membership started the set up of ISBA. Excuse me.
Okay.
I can move on to the next one there, Alan.
Okay.
So then we have an administrative committee and we have certain subcommittees that have started, and they started meeting and setting up around March 22. And then all of those, the board, the administrative committee and the subcommittees all started working to put together the online presence for ISBA and to be able to start getting the structure in place for a website and to be able to start taking membership on board. During that time, we've also been building links with other organisations. We have a very tight link with the DBA, even though we're two separate organisations. The current chair and the current secretary are members of ISBA as well, and they also sit on the admin committee. So we do link very closely with that organisation. We also have a couple of people that are part of our PBS subgroup. And they sit on a working group with HSE at the moment, looking at behaviour and analysis and that type of position within the HSE. And we also tie in with the two universities, NUIG and TCD, and we're linking in with Queen's and Ulster University as well. We're also involved and keep links with the European Association and with the UK and a lot more. So we're kind of networking to see what's happening in Europe and in the universities and within our own country as well. We're doing the whole broad scope. Then Dave has been working away at getting student reps created in all of the universities. So they're established now. And if you don't know who your student rep is, Dave will go into that afterwards. And we also have a registered ACE coordinator. So for people that are still pursuing BCBA accreditation, for those of you that are thinking about, or have come from a pathway within their organisation that still have BCBA, they'll be able to do the CPD events that we put up, but those will also have ACE accreditation attached to them as well.
I'll move on there, Laura.
Yeah. So all of this has been kind of happening. We had our first annual return, so our legal side of things for ISBA had to take place. And then we generated the content, the critical content that we needed for the website, and we launched for membership in January. So there's been a lot happening since the announcement in December 2019 up until the point where we're at now, where we are taking membership and having our first AGM in February. What we're starting to work on now is expanding that membership, which is why we're talking to yourselves as well. We need to have a broader membership on board if we are to show CORU that we're going to have a large enough membership to be able to pursue accreditation. And we're also completing our position statements and further policies, which you might have seen on some of the social media platforms we have. If you haven't seen those, join them, spread the word. And then we have an internal directory that we're using to for students and then for CPD events and stuff like that, which Alan will talk a little bit more later. But I suppose before I finish up, one thing I would like to note is that ISBA is for the whole community. It's not just for those of us that can't pursue the PSI accreditation. What we're trying to do through ISBA is build a community. A lot of us end up being lone practitioners if we're working privately, and I've done that for years, and it is quite an isolated position to be in. So this community helps you network within ISBA. We have a Slack community group that if anybody's not on that app, that's a good place to get involved and start the chats as well with other practitioners. We want to learn from each other. We want to network, and we want to guide the practice of behavioural science in the country to make it more applicable to an Irish context. That's where ISBA is coming from. So it's not like people who can be accredited through PSI can also join us. It's not exclusive. So, but for the purposes, I suppose, of the rest of the presentation, we're going to focus on what ISBA is about, but that doesn't mean that it's exclusive of those that can go through DBA.
Okay, thanks very much, Laura. Is that over to me then, or
Let's
hear
have
me there, Laura? Did we lose Laura there, or are you still there, Laura?
Sorry, I went on mute. Yeah.
All right, I got you now. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, that's over.
Thanks very much, Laura. Right, that's brilliant. So, I suppose just to build on some of the stuff that Laura touched on there, like at our AGM, so we had the inaugural meeting that was forming the organisation that Laura described there as well. It's important to remember as well that we were voted in the board of directors here. Were voted in by the community at that AGM. So there was a working group, a consultative process that went on from early 2020 to the inaugural general meeting. So, you know, like this is a democratic membership organization. Okay, so the people who are here have a mandate to represent the community. And we are designing the organization in order that it is flexible, so that there is rotation amongst the admin committee, so that it continues to reflect the needs of the community, and that it will evolve as the needs of behavior analysis changes over the years. Okay, so we spent a long time designing the structures of the organization so as it's a democratic membership organization, and it doesn't suffer from being stuck with the people who set it up initially. You know what I mean? So it should be responsive to its membership as we go on. So, like with that in mind, then we launched our strategic plan at the AGM. So, like, what some of the things that we need to address. Again, this is coming from, so it all builds on one another. So, at the inaugural general meeting, we set out our constitution. Our constitution says what our objective is, and then at each AGM we review the constitution. Okay, and motions can be made to make changes to that constitution. But as it stands, what we are about is we're about continuous improvement of standards of practice for behavior analysis. We are about public protection and advancing public protection, and Laura touched on that very nicely there as well. Any professional organization should have that as its primary objective. Okay, people in receipt of services, in receipt of any kind of support, need redress where things go wrong, and we need to be transparent and accountable to that. Now, in Ireland, we're lucky to have CORU, and CORU is a statutory body which addresses that. Now, in the interim, what do we do? So we're not registered with CORU yet. So how do we get registered with CORU? We demonstrate a need, and we demonstrate that need by having a public directory of those who are qualified, who have met a minimum defined standard of practice to provide behavior analysis in Ireland. That is what our public directory is about. Okay, so members of the public can go there and they can see, there's Alan, he has done this. His area of practice is positive behavior support. He's available to provide supervision. He's not available to provide private practice. And they can go on to the next person and see that. So it provides that level of transparency and accountability for those seeking applied behavior analysis, positive behavior support, or any other service describing itself as behavioral. And that's why it's vital that if people are providing a service in Ireland and describing it as behavioral, they need to be on our directory. That's what we're going to be saying going forward. And that's the message that we will be giving to CORU, any other public bodies that we are talking to. You're either on our directory or you're listed with the DBA as a behavioral psychologist. They're the two routes. So in that way, we're going to advance public protection. Another thing that we're going to do is that we intend to give meaningful voice in the organization to people in receipt of services or receiving support from both our members or any other support describing itself as behavioural. So to do that, we've taken inspiration from a number of organisations, including Psychiatry and Restraint Reduction Network in the UK and a number of others, who have set up expert by experience panels, and we are currently seeking people to join that panel. Now, what that will look like is that panel will elect its own membership, its own representatives, and those representatives will have a place at the admin committee, and they will have a defined role then in our feedback and complaints policy and in advancing what CPD is required, what the aims of the organisation are, and how we move forward. So in that way, we'll be giving meaningful voice to those in receipt of services. Then our next thing is organizational transparency. Okay, I've touched a little bit on this in terms of the democratic nature of the organization. But what I would also say about this is that we are pursuing, at the moment, you'll notice we're a CGL, that's a company limited by guarantee. And what we intend to do over the next period is to register with the charities regulator in Ireland, and that'll give us another layer of transparency and defined structure, and we will submit the accounts on an annual basis to both of those organisations. So that's we intend to register as soon as we can as a charity in Ireland. We're also intent on adopting the very best governance we can for membership organizations and democratic societies. So with that in mind, we will be publishing position statements over the next couple of years about who we receive money from, if we receive it. We haven't received any, it's immaterial, but we do recognize that going forward, there may be a risk of being funded by different organizations. So we will grasp that early, and we will have very good practice in terms of who funds the Irish Society of Behaviour Analysis, how that funding was received, and we will have safeguards and protections in terms of the independence of the society. So maybe I'll just end actually on a little bit. So thanks very much for listening, and to everyone all the students that have joined so far. So those of you who have joined so far, you might notice we had an update to the website recently, where you should be able to upload your profile picture. You should be able to upload your confirmation that you're enrolled in the course. So if people could do that, please, that would be great. And you'll also notice on your profile, you can indicate whether or not you are seeking a supervisor. And that's an important development. Okay, so for ABA tutors and students, in the coming weeks, we will be directing the public to our directory. And then we will be saying the public-facing directory. And then we will be saying for ABA tutors or for students, the public should only approach those listed on our public-facing directory, and those on our directory should go to the internal directory to select people who are available to provide direct support, either as students or ABA tutors. Now that's an important update that we hope will give a lot more clarity to that role of ABA tutor in the coming weeks. And I think that's all I have for you. Can I go back to David maybe, and we'll do some questions? Maybe if I stop the slideshow there, and we'll see who's there.
Yeah, I'll just put in one other point there, Alan.
Thanks, David.
Because I feel I'm probably an example of somebody who is transitioning, like yourselves, from this perceived regulated route the BACB were providing for all behaviour analysis in Ireland at the time. And I was transitioning from student to the BACB withdrawing, to trying to discover, okay, what was, from a very practical point of view, where was I going to work and how was I going to work, and was it going to be a regulated profession that I was going to work in? And I'm sure everybody there is thinking the exact same thing. So it was very important for me to become involved in an organization that will potentially become highly regulated, therefore providing the protection to the public that we desperately need. And also in terms of practical things like a pay scale. So therefore, that we've got to protect the title, and we've got a pay scale also. So therefore, we know from some anecdotal evidence that people are getting paid on OT scales, SLT scales, social care leader scales, social care worker scales, every kind of scale that you can imagine, so that we can, basically work in the field. And then, and our work is highly desirable as well. We provide a huge amount to people in terms of evidence-based practice. I come across it all the time.
And I suppose, can I just add something to that as well, Dave? Because I know that you and Alan are coming from the background of the health and social care side of things. But there's also the home tuition or the Department of Education side of things as well, and it's important that for those of us that are being involved in that route or still are going down that route, have that pathway where it's not a condition, it's not a conditional teaching council number that you have, that we start to secure this as an unconditional teaching council number to allow us to be able to access the education system too.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's a perfect point of how ISBA is evolving. We're evolving all the time to incorporate all these different types of working situations, and it's only through membership where we become really representative of how it's delivered nationally, that we can go to organizations like CORU and say, this is our membership, these are the people that we represent, and then that's how you go forward. And it takes time. It'll take time. There will be a process to do it, but I suppose, realistically, how a student becomes involved is they pay their 10 euros to ISBA, you join, and then we've got you represented. You're there, you can talk about your experiences. We've got the other platforms that you can become involved in. And that's a broad basis for how we can move forward. And that's why we're here talking to you today, because we feel it's vitally needed.
Yeah, and we'll be asking as well for your supervisors to be members of the ISBA. Okay, that's a clarification that it needs to happen as well, is that supervision needs to come either through a behavioural psychologist or through a member of the ISBA. Otherwise, that then we won't be able to stand over the practice in the future. So your supervisors need to be members of either the ISBA or the DBA.
And they have to be behaviour analyst members or behaviour analyst at doctoral level members to be able to provide you with supervision if you're coming through the ISBA route.
Yeah, I suppose, look, we on our website, and this is the next part that we were going to talk about anyway, and it's the supports that we provide for students. So we've got our section on students on the website. And, just to run through it very briefly there, we're going to it will be about, how we represent a student going forward, how we use the structures of the BACB at the moment, because it's an evolving situation. So say, for instance, in terms of supervised hours, we have got a form on the website that you can fill to use that. And as Laura said, if you intend on working in Ireland in the future, it will be highly beneficial for you to fill out that form in conjunction with perhaps your BACB form if you intend on working in the United States or in Canada, where your supervisor would have to be a BCBA. But also, it will be highly desirable for you to have that BCBA is also a member at behaviour analyst level or behaviour analyst doctoral level with the Irish Society of Behaviour Analysis. So therefore, in the future, it's a simple transfer from student to behavior analyst. And all the forms are there, and they can be uploaded to the website. And therefore, then going forward, you know, it's all there. The other thing then is we've got an ethical code. Again, it is aligned with the BACB for the moment, because all the structures are there. It's a no-brainer to carry that on at the moment. But again, that will evolve because we'll want to be culturally specific. Okay? And last thing, and then Alan, in terms of supervision requirements, we've already talked about that a little bit. So that's the practicality of student membership of the Irish Society for Behaviour Analysis.
Mm-hmm. And then in terms of the Code of Ethics consultation process, that's identified in our strategic plan. If you're interested in that, you'll find it on the website under the policies and positions. So we will be launching that consultation process and aligning it, starting from where we are, aligning it with as things develop, both in the UK SBA and with the EABA. And we're also part of the Euro BA professional advisory group, who have launched competencies for behaviour analysis recently. Some of you may have seen those. So we're part of the 14 countries. We represent Ireland on that group. Yeah, any questions, I suppose, at this stage, or do you have anything else, Laura, you'd like to add?
Do you want to just talk as well about the student area on the website, just to point people in that direction if they're going to join up for membership? Or
Sure, yeah, bear with me there.
And then after that, we'll just open for questions as well.
Okay. I'm just sharing my screen there now a little bit briefly. So what you'll find here is there you can join. And you'll have to forgive me, it's a little bit slow because my computer's doing too many things at one time. Here's the different membership levels: Master and Assistant Behaviour Analyst, ABA Tutor, and the student membership here. It's now a requirement when you start this, you'll now be required to upload your letter confirming your enrollment. Previously, there was an issue with the uploading, and we had to ask people after the fact. Now, have it ready. When you start to do this, have a PDF of your letter confirming, and then you'll be asked to upload it. Then once we've checked your details, we can approve your membership, and you'll be able to log in to this area here, which is the internal bit. This is just a template one, you know, set up under Irish Society of Behaviour Analysis. So this is what it looks like. So you have your account here, your membership level, your username, your membership number as well, and then your membership card. Okay, so you'll be able to print that with your membership number. So going forward, we'll be able to use that. We then have our internal directory. Now, this is what I spoke about earlier on. Now, this lists all of the members who are at student member or ABA tutor member. Okay, so that's what our internal directory is. I won't click on that now because it'll show you people's names. I don't want to, you know, do that right now just because I haven't permission to disclose everyone's. But so that's the internal directory. And your supervisors, so full members, behaviour analysts, doctorate level behaviour analysts, can go to that internal directory and say, okay, there's Alan, he is seeking a supervisor and he's in Munster. Okay, so then they can contact you using the contact form in the internal directory and say, here, listen, I see you're looking for a supervisor. So that's how that system will work. Similarly, behaviour analyst in private practice who is seeking an ABA tutor can go to the internal directory and say, oh, look, well, here's Dave, I see he's in Munster, he's available to be supervised. So that's how they can find people there. The CPD section of the website is coming soon. So here, very similar to the BACB section of the website, we're going to define CPD criteria. And here you will be able to upload upload the criteria that you have met the supervision requirements. And then your renewal of membership will be contingent on that. So you'll meet a certain level of CPD, and then you'll be able to renew in a similar way that we're familiar with. And then our meetings and events, internal meetings and events, these are here, these will be published here. And these are the meeting times for the special interest groups. The admin and board meetings are posted here, including a student meeting that we have ongoing right now. So that's the kind of structure of the internal bit of the website. And that's what you can expect to see when you log in and join. I won't go over the public facing bit. You can do that in your own time. Oh,
thanks, Alan.
I'll just stop presenting now.
If you want to, just before we open to the floor there, if you want to, we had a query about insurance, and Alan has an update on that one.
Yeah, so that was a query about securing insurance. Now, we've been in touch with O'Brien Finlay insurance provider to discuss about how we can be registered as an organisation with them. Now, previously, the Munster Behaviour Analyst Forum was listed as one of those organisations, and PSI is also listed one of those organisations as well. So we hope to have that updated in the coming weeks, and we'll make an announcement via Slack when that is resolved. Okay, so keep an eye on the Slack channels, and you'll see that. Do we want to go? University of Galway has their hand up. The whole university has raised their hand. I'd go there first.
Hi, Alan. This is Aoife here. I'm hiding on the other side of the camera. Apologies.
Hey, Aoife. How you doing?
Can I just start by saying thank you to Laura, David, and Alan for coming to speak with us today. It has been really informative, and some of the students here have said that you've already answered their questions in the talk that you've given. So really comprehensive, and thank you so much. Just want to say thanks as well for all the work that you've put into this, because I know myself it can be really difficult to have a full-time job and still volunteer on these boards, and you're giving an awful lot back into the behaviour analysis community, so thank you very much for that. And on that note, we have a question from Shona Diffley. No, you're fine. No, you're fine. I think they can hear you.
Can you hear me okay?
Hear you okay, Shona? Yeah, go ahead.
So my question is kind of about like becoming a supervisor. So I have my master's done here and I'm a PhD student, and basically, you know, the way you can become a BCBA but not a BCBA supervisor, is there the equivalent with ISBA? So technically at the moment I qualify to be a behaviour analyst level member, but I don't have my BCBA, I don't have my supervision course done. Does that mean I'm still able to supervise students going forward? Or, yeah, I just want a bit of clarification on that route.
So short answer. Do you want to go first, Laura? Yeah, you go ahead. Well, short answer is that we don't have that ironed out yet. Long answer is that we're aware of that as an issue, and we do need to start to outline standards for supervisors, so that you can supervise when you've met this criteria. So, you know, you've identified a loophole there that we need to address, and we intend to address it. Yeah.
Thank you.
What have you got something there, Laura, as well?
Yeah, no, exactly, really the same as that. I suppose at the moment in the interim and the transition over from BACB to ISBA, we're kind of saying if you can keep the standards that were part of the BACB, then that's what we are looking for. But to be honest, with the way that the directory is set up in the website as well, once you are a behaviour analyst, it essentially it looks like you can supervise other people. So that process isn't concrete yet. So for your own sake, if you feel competent to supervise, that's one thing. You know, if you can do the supervision course, it is a beneficial course. It is a good course, but it's not from the ISBA point of view at the moment, it's not requirement.
Yeah,
I'll just add one other thing there. And as Laura said, if you do any of these things, document it somehow, so that we can have, there's some documentation to say that something happened going forward. So that it's, as we said, it's an evolving situation and we're aware of these things. But I feel like if you document it and then, there's something there, we can retrospectively maybe look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it is a loophole, and obviously it is an evolving situation as well. I think Shauna's situation is probably unique, so completely understandable that that's something that has to be ironed out as of
And
yet.
I suppose, like, when you look at the CPD stuff, when that starts coming on board, that supervision course will be like eligible for CPD as well for us, but so it is still worth doing,
Yeah, and that's the next big thing really, is we have a CPD and events policy that we're working very hard to get over the line at the moment. Once we have that over the line, then that gives us a process to be able to say, we're sanctioning that event. And this event meets with our standards and values. Then we can start to roll out that supervision training. We can start to say that this is a requirement for our supervisors. So that bit has to come first, and we're almost there with that. I keep saying that I'm overly optimistic about how long these things take. I feel like we're almost there with that. We're working hard on it. Once we have that done, then we can move to the next bit, which will be to start to create that content and say, these are the standards for supervisors that must meet these standards. And so we're getting there. Bear with us.
Great, thanks so much.
I think Olive has her hand up there now, do you?
Yeah, hi everyone. Sorry, I'm getting to mute that. Yeah, we have some questions coming in from our students here. I think there are 3 so far. I just wanted to start by asking you about the International Behaviour Analysis Organisation and whether there's been any overlap or discussion with them on how they are progressing. They seem to be making some good strides across Europe. So that's the first question. The second question is in relation to time frames. One of the students here was interested in figuring out the accreditation with CORU. Do we have any idea the kind of time frame that might be involved with that, so that these labels of our practitioners can be recognised and protected? And then thirdly, just how are pay scale benchmarks identified? Is there any developments on that, or do we know anything about that? I think so far that's it from us here. We'll come back in a sec. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I can go with some of those, Laura, if that's okay. Or
Yeah, do you want to go with the European one, and I'll go with what was the second question there again, Olive? Just remind me, just the
Time frames.
time frames. Yeah, I'll go with the time frame one, yeah.
Okay, great. Basically, well, what I would say that is the BACB gave us a framework, but it was never a statutory requirement in Ireland. It was never regulatory in Ireland. And that's the exact same position with the international, I'm sorry, I'm going to mix up the international group there currently. Okay, so while that might give us a standard to coalesce around, it will not address the issue of statutory regulation in Ireland. So we need statutory regulation at national levels. Okay, we can coordinate internationally in terms of training standards with the verified course sequence and ethical standards, but we must have statutory regulation nationally. Otherwise, we're going to be back into a situation where we're not recognized nationally. So that's the nettle that needs to be grasped. So that's what I would say about those international organizations. I think we can coordinate internationally. Ultimately, when it comes to statutory regulation, that needs to happen at a national level. Is that okay, Laura Woods?
Yeah. So in terms of the time frame for CORU type registration, they reckon it's about 4 years from the establishment of a registration board. Now, to put that in perspective as well, from our point of view, speech therapists and occupational therapists are currently registered through CORU. The Psychology Society of Ireland is not. Psychotherapists are not. They're all pursuing CORU registration, but they're not there yet either. Where we need to get to with the CORU registration is we really need membership on board now, so that we have a community to be able to present to CORU to say we need to regulate this body of people. And if we don't have registration in the door, if we don't have membership, we can't show a community big enough to do that. And at the moment, with in terms of ISBA, it might seem like you're not getting very much for membership, particularly when you step over from the threshold of student, which is only €10, into being an actual behaviour analyst registration, which is 120 for the year. And you might think, well, you know, we don't really get much for that. But what we're asking, I suppose, is that we as a community invest in ourselves at the moment. And if we don't invest in ourselves and build this community to show to CORU, we won't achieve registration. That's the way it will be. So, you know, it's going to take time to get CORU, but PSI haven't got CORU yet either. Yet they're well established as a charity and an organisation in their own right, and they're respected through that. And that's, I suppose, what we're trying to start with for ISBA, is to get ourselves set up as that charity as well, that presence, that registration board within ourselves, and then the next jump then is to CORU, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And the last question.
You probably can talk about the pay scale query a little bit, because you probably have a little bit of
yeah, because I suppose like that's an open question, but you know, what I can say about that is that there are talks ongoing with the HSE, and both ourselves and the Division of Behaviour Analysis are both engaging with the HSE in terms of regulating practice and standards for behaviour support in Ireland. Now, this is a very important area and it has to be addressed. And the reason it has to be addressed is because positive behaviour support is now a statutory requirement for HICWA regulated services in Ireland. It's on the statute book, statutory instrument number 367 of the Health Act. You're welcome to go and have a look at it if you wish. I'd recommend it because I think we all should be familiar with it, and we should be able to name, but actually, if you're a HICWA registered service, you must be providing positive behaviour support. So while it's required, standards are not set. So anyone can set up and say, oh, here, listen, we're offering positive behaviour support. Now, we need, as a community, we need to say that that's not okay. It's not okay. There has to be minimum standards of practice. And that's what we intend to do over the coming time. So even though we're not statutory regulated, we will be coming out with strong statements about the practice of positive behaviour support, ABA, and any other service describing itself behavioural. And people providing those services need to have a minimum standard of competence, supervised practice, and they need to be able to demonstrate that they're open and transparent and members of the relevant organisations, whether that be ourselves or the DBA. So we need to get off the fence on this and start making strong statements about who we are and the standards that we expect from our community. Sorry.
And there is a working group at the moment working alongside the HSE, like Alan said,
yes,
but it's just that process is ongoing at the moment. So that process is ongoing, so documents are confidential, and I don't want to say too much about it, you know, but it is happening. It's happening at a national level. The other thing that I'll add as well is that Laura and I have a meeting set up with Forsa, a national representative of Forsa, looking at people who are currently in practice but who don't meet what we're calling alternative routes to practice. So they don't have the standards that we would expect. And we're looking to see how we go about squaring that circle and regularizing that. We have a plan that we're going to put to them. Again, I won't say too much about that because we're going to talk to the unions about that, about how we can progress that. I see we only have 4 minutes left, so sorry. And we have another question.
We've got a question there from Sikai, is it?
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to ask, because you mentioned that ISBA and then PSI, you are all both pursuing a registration with CORU. And ISBA is most beneficial to people without who are not eligible for PSI registration. But my question is, for some of us who are eligible for PSI registration, is there an overlap now for joining ISBA and DBA as well, considering I know you're different organizations, but you're saying you work together? And so is it one must have one or the other, or do we have to register for both? And as such, there is a PSI supervision. I understand you said we have to also fill in the supervision for ISBA. So we have the international BC, the international one, then the PSI one. Do we now have to also fill in the ISBA one for supervision? So that makes them 3. So I just need to know so that it's not confusing.
Right, so it's one or the other.
Yeah. So we'll accept the BACB supervision forms the same as, so if you want to, in the future, work in Canada or the States, then you're filling out the BACB supervision forms and you're making sure that your supervisor is not just a member of the DBA or a member of ISBA, but you're making sure that they're also a BCBA. If in the future you think you're going to go to Canada or the US, you need to have that secured. So it has to be BCBA supervision and it has to be on the BCBA forms. Now, for us, whether it's on the ISBA form or whether it's on the BACB form, we'll accept both because they're both the same. It's the same process, and then for the international one, again, as long as it's meeting those standards, there are some, we don't know what that is at the moment, but so for at the moment, BACB form or our form, both the same. Those one. Also, just in relation to if you're eligible for the DBA registration, you're not obliged to sign up for ISBA. That's up to you. That's your call, The ISBA is just, we're trying to build a community. DBA is also building a community. So that's by choice whether you want to be involved in one or both. But both have a cost attached, so that's your choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just to reiterate what Alan said in terms of, a national being involved, we kind of need to sort this out, first of all, nationally, before you move into any international organization or the structures that they will collate. So it makes sense to have your supervision and your hours as closely as aligned as you can nationally. So that will be either with the DBA, ISBA ourselves, or the BACB, because we can't keep a track of an international loose organization. Going forward, the verified core sequences, that makes sense, but nationally, we kind of need to get this thing sorted out first.
Okay, we're just at 12. I know we started a few minutes late, so I'm okay for another few minutes. You have other questions?
Myself and Alan will also be at the DBA this conference as well. So if anybody's attending DBA, they can approach us and ask us any questions at that stage as well, have a chat.
I just had a query here. I'm just replying to us.
And just in terms of student representation there, this has been a part of my plan kind of to get people together. And I know I've been in contact with people in terms of representation. I would encourage everyone to join Slack if they're joining it. And then you've got the different subcommittees there that you can join also. But I will be in contact with Maven Olive and Aoife again going forward in the Republic, and probably with Stephen and Devon in the North.
And you can always email any questions to admin@isba.ie anytime too.
Yeah, I've just posted that email address there in the chat. Thanks very much for your time and attention. Like, I think we will do this. It's going to happen. It has to happen. It needs to happen. And we're determined to make it. We're determined to make it a reality. We've been working on it for a long time. And ultimately, we're firmly committed to realizing evidence-based practice in social policy in Ireland. And that means behavioral analysis. That means behavioral science. So if you're committed to that as well, and evidently you're sitting there on a master's program, so get on board with that message, okay? And we're not going to do it, and we have to do it collectively. So thanks very much, everybody.
And I think just on one last note as well, from somebody that worked in isolation for a lot of years as well, like I have found the networking through Slack has been great as well. So I would advise you to just join that, even just keep an eye on the conversations that are going on and just get to know people in the field as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Thanks very much for your time, everybody. Will we sign out and stop the recording? Email
I think
link. Yeah, listen, I'll post that. Where's the best place to post that? If you ask a friend to invite you, if some course mates, or maybe David will share it in the email, that might be the thing to do with the Slack invite. Okay, thanks very much, everyone.